Do we Indians really care about what's happening in Gaza, in Lebanon, to the Palestinians in general, or are we indifferent? And if so, what is the reason? That is what we are talking about in this week's National Interest. However, before I go any further, I have to remind you that so many of you, tens of thousands of you, watch us across the world in so many foreign countries. Every part of the world, there are Indians, there are smart Indians like you who watch us. We want you to take paid subscriptions. It costs you nothing, just $10 a month. For that, you get top quality on ground journalism from India, and it is unhyphenated journalism. So you should be willing to pay at least that much price to let good journalism survive and thrive in the country of your origin. So this is an appeal especially for our overseas watchers, listeners, and readers. At which point we come to the question we are debating today, which is why is there so little sympathy in India for the Gazans specifically and the Palestinians in general? Why are there no protests, barring some fleeting ones after Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah's killing, mostly in zones with significant Shia populations like parts of the Kashmir Valley and Lucknow? These were also fleeting. No major political party, not the Congress or even others who rely on the Muslim vote, such as the Samajwadi Party or the Trinamool Congress, have spoken in anger. Forget organizing a protest. Some left intellectual groups did hold a tiny solidarity meeting for Palestinians at Delhi's Jantar Mantar earlier this week, of which I will share the link to a story with you with the description. But it was so small, I wouldn't even call it a picture postcard protest. It was tinier than the postage stamp on a picture postcard. The secular parties that spoke out initially retreated into their shells shortly thereafter, confused and I'd suspect more than a bit wary given what looks like the overwhelming pro-Israel mood among the majority in India. I know for some of them it will also be the question of Hezbollah because Hezbollah is Shia, so they don't want to wade into the Shia-Sunni equation in India because they don't want their Muslim vote divided any which way. Nevertheless, back to the main issue, the Congress party waffled as it often does, as it said something on Twitter or X first, then others disowned it and followed up with something more diplomatically nuanced. Only Priyanka Gandhi spoke in outrage. She has also to contest elections in Wayanad, where Muslims make up more than 40% of the voters. We can understand the wariness of the opposition. They all want the Muslim vote but wouldn't dare to alienate the Hindus. Therefore, the larger question is why is the larger Indian public opinion so indifferent? Do human tragedies no longer move us? Or, like all great powers, have we also learned to see all such situations through the prism of politics? Is it then just that the Hindus see this purely as an Israel versus Muslims issue? The argument could also be that it isn't seen only through a communal prism, but also through the prism of national interest. This week, as Israelis and the global Jewish community hold solemn ceremonies to mark the first anniversary of the 7th October attacks by Hamas, is a good time for us to examine these questions. The easy temptation would be to link this to the rise of the BJP, that in the Modi decade, Hindutva subsumes all our political and strategic worldview and also sets our moral compass. And who would dare to protest on a campus in India now? The reality isn't this simplistic, but it is simple. As it dawned on me after weeks of reflecting when I watched Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif speak at the UN General Assembly. He equated Palestinians and Kashmiris and demanded self-determination for both. So he hyphenated Kashmir and Palestine. Quick search then showed that not only the Pakistanis but also their friends Mahathir Mohamad and Recep Tayyip Erdogan in 2019, for example, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, have been hyphenating Palestine and Kashmir. At the UN General Assembly in 2016, Nawaz Sharif mentioned Palestine and Kashmir together and hailed Burhan Wani also as a hero and leader of the Kashmiri Intifada. You can search back on the UN website, and this has gone on forever. Musharraf, before that, other leaders. Just last month, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had personally tweeted equating the plight of Muslims in Myanmar, that is the Rohingya, Palestine, and Kashmir. You expect Indians now to feel sorry for the Iranians and their proxies if they are being laid waste by the Israelis? The fact is, we used to be almost this stupid some time back, but are no longer so. I will return to this later and also why I use a strong expression like stupid. If the Palestinians care about Indian support, therefore, they first need to go down politely on their knees to Pakistan, Iran, and Pakistan's seasonal pals. Turkey and Malaysia no longer mention Kashmir, by the way, and the OIC too, and beg them to dehyphenate them from Kashmir. Or why would India care? This totally unthinking, irrational, misplaced Pakistani quest for building larger sympathy in the Islamic world by conflating Palestine with Kashmir has lost the former cause in India, which means it has lost the Palestinian cause in India. All of India resents the Pakistanis harping on Kashmir. And then they say Kashmir, Palestine, the same. So Pakistanis are also queuing those Indians who might have been feeling bad for the Gazans and Palestinians now to say that, look, this is being linked to our issue in Kashmir. In all of India, outside the Kashmir Valley, the public opinion is what Kashmir issue? What is the Kashmir issue? Whatever issue there might have been was settled on 5th of August 2019 with the constitutional changes, and it has now been sanctified by a 63.88% turnout, resulting in the defeat of the BJP. In the valley also, support for Pakistan's view is diminishing. It has not fully disappeared, but it's diminishing even faster than Pakistan's fading comprehensive national power or CNP. The reason we said that we must avoid the temptation to see this as the usual enemies, my friend. The first enemy in this case is Muslim, and enemies enemy is Jew. That enemies, my friend. The reason we should not see it like that is the changed reality of what is called the Islamic world and India's equation with it. Israel is probably the most popular country in India now, since, of course, the disappearance of the Soviet Union. I will return to that in a bit. Meanwhile, check out India-Israel relations on the MEA website. It begins by stating that we are strategic partners. Then look at the list of India's other comprehensive and strategic partnerships. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, among the most powerful Islamic and Arab states, all of them Israel's neighbors. They've been intercepting Iranian proxies missiles aimed at Israel. As we have said many times, including in an article of which I will share a link with you, you can also see it on your screens. National interest always trumps pan-Islamism. Their shared strategic threat for these Arab countries is Iran, its Shia base, and its links with the Muslim Brotherhood. The so-called Muslim world has stopped seeing Palestine as an Islamic issue. In fact, until about 30 years back, in many parts of the world, it was seen as a secular issue because there was an element of the left and there were also many Christian spokespersons of the Palestinians. However, over time, Palestinian issue also became more Islamized. The Middle East strategic and political picture is much more layered and cluttered than some simple Jewish Muslim or even Sunni Shia binary. There is no one factor binding the Middle East: religion, ethnicity, or third worldism. Nationalism rules. This isn't a post Cold War phenomenon either. In 1981, Jordan and Saudi Arabia both helped by looking the other way as Israeli aircraft flew overhead to reach and bomb Iraq's Osirak reactor. Arab nations feared Soviet supported Saddam Hussein's Iraq, its exportable Baathism ideology. Countries therefore act in their own national interest, not for somebody's cause, either ideological, religious, or moral. The reason we even debate this in India is because our own Middle East and Israel policy was fully determined earlier by Cold War considerations, and we took too long to change. The Arabs were seen to be trouble, Western stooges, and patrons of Pakistan. Of course, they also harbored, UAE in particular, harbored a lot of our mafiosi, which now they return on demand. The moment they find one, they return on demand. So everything's changed dramatically. I do not know What else would explain an Indian Prime Minister not going to UAE for 34 years until Modi's first visit in 2015? Because the Arab countries, there was a chill in our relationship with the Arab countries, although we pretended to count Arabs among our great friends. If you read up on the flip flops over the creation of Israel, it's a story of grand hypocrisy and great compulsions for India. India voted against the partition of Palestine in 1947, and in his reply to a 4 page letter from Albert Einstein, Nehru justified that vote by saying that leaders have to unfortunately pursue policies that are essentially selfish. What was selfish, he explained later. On September 17, 1950, however, Nehru's India recognized Israel. When Israel was formed, the political force backing Israel was the RSS then and Golwalkar and Savarkar. On 17 September 1950, India recognized Israel after having voted against it at the UN just 3 years earlier. Here is how Nehru justified it. He said, he said India would have recognized Israel long ago because Israel is, after all, a reality, but we refrained because of our desire not to offend our Arab friends. And how did those Arab friends pay back? India, therefore, watched in dismay as the decades of conflict arrived, especially in the 1960s, as the Muslim world, particularly the Arab states, sided with Pakistan. In the 1971 war, Jordan loaned some of its F 104 starfighters to Pakistan, and the Shah's Iran offered the PAF sanctuaries in 1965 in case they needed them. All these decades, Israel helped quietly when asked. Help India, of course. People of India were watching this and adoring Israel even more. Later in Kargil, aerial bombing only became effective when the Israelis transferred overnight laser guidance kits. It was with bombs rigged with these laser guidance kits, that the IAF Mirage 2000 started hitting precise targets on those altitudes in that terrain. Meanwhile, the Arab world and the Israelis also formally warmed up. The Abraham Accords came, then I2U2, and the IMEEC, that is the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. With such a convergence of strategic interest and the isolation of Iran and its proxies, mostly the Palestinian belligerents and also Hezbollah and Houthis, you don't expect Indians to make the mistakes of the Cold War past, because Indians now are much smarter. If we use the term stupid for what we did earlier, as I did, it was only because there was a long period when our foreign policy was aligned with every anti Western ism. This is the era now of a policy determined only by the national interest. That is the only ism that matters now. Public opinion only takes its cue accordingly.